Victor. Just a little lower. We're getting ready to start here. Well, welcome back. Hope everybody's had an opportunity to see some of the vendors that you didn't get to before. As I told you before you left, we're about ready to talk on the 7 deadly sins of backup and recovery. Back in my mind, I'm thinking there's probably more than 7, but James DeJacque with CCC Technology will go ahead and at least give us the 7 that he feels are the most important. James?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate being here. This is going to be a little bit like preaching to the choir, I'm sure. All of you are up to date. You're all up to speed. You have no issues. Right? Okay. Well, if that's not the case, maybe some of this topic will be of interest to you. So let me kick into gear. We're going to kind of build up into the 7 deadly sins. First, we're going to lay a little bit of a foundation, if it's all right with you. And I understand this is an informal group. Is that right? If there's some questions. Informal? Yeah, okay. If you're going to throw something, there were stress balls at the CCC booth. Okay, those sponge balls. So if you're going to throw that, that's fine. Anything else, keep it on the table. Okay. All right. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I really do appreciate it. I'm happy to say that I've been able to speak to a number of groups, including the Banks Association, the Healthcare Association, and what brings all these groups into commonality is, the renewed interest in compliance. Now, in your world, there is compliance issues I'm aware of. Certainly in those fields, there's a lot of compliance issues. Some of those are more police than others, as you may know. Certainly in the banking world, it's really under scrutiny. Examiners do come in. They do write up process procedure. They actually do go through due diligence to be sure that compliance can be achieved. If they're not, the bank actually will lose a rating. In fact, if they can't demonstrate it in successions, they will actually be unchartered, believe it or not. Healthcare is a little different. Healthcare kind of does it in the rearview mirror. If you do have an incident, that's when the examiners come in, okay? So it's not done actively, it's done reactively. In your industry, I'm probably a different mixed bag. I'm not sure what kind of reporting you need to do to upper management and who you're responsible to. But in the end of the day, you're all responsible to yourselves, right? If you're not under some rules, regulations, laws, reality gets down to we're all professionals, so it's about best practice. So I think we can all agree on that platform. We're all interested in best practice. We are going to touch on the 7 deadly sins as we go through it. But first of all, let's talk about 21st century data protection and recovery. Most organizations are still, believe it or not, in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. But most organizations are not in the 21st century when it comes to protecting their data and demonstrating recoverability. We'll go through a process. You can kind of gauge where you think you're at. And if you think you've got areas to improve, you certainly have an opportunity to do that. What's the obstacles? What's some of the factors, the compliance, the legal considerations, the past? Where's this going? Where's the past? I think we all have a fair idea. We've come from the past. We're in the present. We're going to the future. So what is the future going to be? Some of that's dictated by all the technology you're adopting or being forced upon you to adopt within your organizations. What's the role of IT? What's management's role? How about mission criticality? We've all heard that term. Off-site data centers. I'm sure many of you are moving into the off-site data center world and protecting yourselves if there's a data center failure. And then last but not least, I've been given an opportunity to just touch on unitrends. So with that said, let's go into perceptions. I've visited many municipalities. I've been in many county governments, and frankly, there's a theme, a common theme that seems to prevail, that backup recovery, disaster recovery is not a high priority. Now, maybe it's different in your organization. As I say, I might be preaching to the choir here today. But Dilbert says, the plan that he has in place is, help, throw up your hands, and come to my rescue, please. Perceptions, difficult to obtain executive buy-in. If you are in the typical IT world, whenever upper management, i.e. CFO, business manager, sees you, they usually turn the other way because typically you got a laundry list or a Christmas list in your hands of things you need. And usually dollars are scarce. resources are scarce and more duties and responsibilities are abundant. Is that a commonality amongst most of you here this morning? Because if it's not, then you're very unusual. Henry Kissinger had a quote, "There can't be any crisis this week, my schedule's already full." Okay, so you can hang that on your wall or your door, wherever your audience can see it. And here's the guy who's actually talking to his manager after he won the lottery. So maybe you have that feeling on a day in, a day out basis. If you win the lottery, you may have a license to go forward. Perceptions. Backup recovery protection is trendy, it's a new fad, and don't worry, we have a disaster plan. How many feel that way, okay, in your organization? What are the legal reasons? I recently was part of a presentation. This gentleman spoke, so I want to give him credit for some of the material you're about to see here. He's with a major law firm that has offices in Wisconsin and in Illinois. Great speaker. If you ever happen to run across Andy in some of your itinerary, by all means, take some time out, attend the session. You'll enjoy it. Where does it apply? All electronic assets. This is a great periodical, Sailing in Dangerous Waters, a director's guide to data governance. It's kind of the Bible of the referral to all. Contracts. Groucho Marx said, "I wish to be cremated. 1/10 of my ashes will be given to my agent as written in our contract." How many contracts do you have organizationally that actually have a stipulation of compliance to disaster recovery, business asset protection? Probably more than we'd even be aware of. We're not included in all contract negotiations in the IT world. And when they do happen, those responsibilities are assumed by IT in many cases without even knowledge. There's assumptions. Service obligations, confidentiality, intellectual property, limitation of liability, licensing, warranties, all have an impact. Then there's common law. Did you know, and many of you may, did you know that there is a fiduciary responsibility to IT? It has legal implications of data protection. You can research it. It's not just the fact of a job. There is actual custodial responsibility that applies to IT into best practice. Legal recommendations. Conduct an assessment of your BC plan. How many here have actually had an assessment done in the last year of your backup recovery, disaster recovery plan? Okay, you sir?
We test ours twice a year.
Twice a year. And is that a requirement or is that a best practice?
Just something we've done all of it.
It's best practice in your case, okay? Would you encourage others to do that?
Yeah.
Any surprises?
Not really. When
Okay.
they were at the beginning, we shook them out over the years, so
Okay.
3 or 4 years now.
So you sort of ironed out the wrinkles and you know what to expect. Well, congratulations.
You're my hero.
Okay. Well, so what's the first rule of actually with a plan? Sir, do you have a written document that is your process procedure?
It's about a 15 or 16-page document. It's evolved over the years. We keep tweaking it as we go.
Is it growing or is it shrinking?
It's growing.
It's growing. Okay. So when you do have the book edition of that, are you willing to publish and then share it with the
Oh, yeah.
All right. Okay. Obviously, there's a lot of good material out on the internet. You can really gather this material. There certainly are professional organizations available that do these types of studies, and they're really not all that expensive. So, you know, borrowing perception and purchasing knowledge is not a bad practice. Here's a good quote, though, by W. Scott, Director of Florida Spaceport. At the onset of emergency, everybody's IQ goes immediately to 0. Okay? And I think we could all attest to that. You know, when we're in a crisis mode, you know, we're kind of in a reaction mode. We're just grabbing for any straw. I mean, if I'm cast overboard and I see a fin going, will I grab onto that or will I drown? And it's a shark on the other end, okay? You know, we're going to buy a moment in time if we can. Are you playing the odds? Well, 75% of you don't have a DR plan in place. Okay, that's statistics speaking. 90% of you do not have an RTO policy. RTO policy, recovery time objective. I like to call a recovery time requirement. Okay? Objective is a great thing, but there's really more of an implication of requirement. Okay? So what is that plan? It's an agreement between you and management, upper management, as to what the expectation has been set for. Now, once you have that, you have a